Hey everyone, welcome back to another Vibe video for AP Statistics. I'm Ria.
I'm Romy,
And I'm Mahadev.
and today we're going to be talking about null versus alternative hypothesis.
First, what is a null hypothesis? Well, a null hypothesis is a claim that states that there's no effect or difference. So a variable does not affect another variable, or the extent to one variable is equal to the extent to another variable. And default assumption, the null hypothesis is always the default assumption stated, and it's reality. The symbol for null hypothesis is HO.
Now we're going to talk about what the alternative hypothesis is. The alternative hypothesis is a claim stating that there is an effect or difference, or in other words, it's statistically significant. So if an easier way to remember this is by thinking that the alternative hypothesis is not reality, but it is the scenario that we want to be true. And the symbol for that is HA.
So when do we use null hypotheses and alternative hypotheses? We use null and alternative hypotheses when we're doing a significance test, also called a hypothesis test. And the goal is to see whether the data we collected provides strong enough evidence to support a claim about a population. So the null hypothesis represents the claim we assume is true. So usually meaning there's like no effect or no difference. And the alternative hypothesis is what we want to find evidence for. It suggests that there is a real effect or there is a real difference. So overall, hypothesis testing helps us decide whether the data backs up a specific claim or if the results could just be due to chance.
How do you set up null hypotheses and alternative hypotheses in significance tests? Remember that HO means that there isn't a difference between two variables, and HA means that there is an effect between one variable and another. So during significance tests, a proportion or mean in their initial claim is the reality. And for example, a company claims that 30% of their jelly beans are red, and then that means that our null hypothesis, we set that P is equal to 0.3, which is our 30% of jelly beans being red. And then a proportion or mean in their proposal is what their belief is that contradicts the reality. So there's a student who suspects that the percentage is different from the claimed 30%. So she randomly selects 100 jelly beans from the larger group and finds that 40 of them turn out to be red. This means that and since the student suspects that our percentage is different, our alternative hypothesis is that the probability is not equal to 0.3.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about some tips and keywords that you can use to remember how to differentiate between null and alternative hypothesis. Start off with some tips. The null hypothesis will always be null hypothesis colon either the proportion or the mean equal sign. Okay, and you'll know whether to use a proportion or the mean based off the question. Or for the alternative hypothesis will always be proportion or mean is either greater than, not equal to, or less than. So those are the signs you will use. Now, for some keywords and this is specifically for the alternative hypothesis, if you see the word low in the question, that means that your alternative hypothesis, the proportion or mean, is greater than. If you see different, you will use the sign not equal to. And if you see the word high or higher, you'll use less than.
So this is an example problem. Take a second to read it and pause the video. Yeah. So in this problem, the school claims that 60% of students participate in after school activities. A student thinks that's an overestimate. She believes that the true percentage is lower. She surveys 80 students and 40 say they participate. So we're testing whether the sample provides evidence that the true proportion is less than 60% at a significance level of 0.5 or 0.05. So our hypotheses would be that the null hypothesis is equal to 0.6, and that would be that 60% of people participate. And our alternative hypothesis is that P is less than 0.6. That means that fewer than 60% of students participate. This sets up a left tail test since we're testing for a proportion lower than the claim.
Now let's look at an AP practice question. Pause to read the question. The correct answer is B. The average number of hours of exercise per week for East Coast adults is the same as the average number of hours of exercise per week for the West Coast adults. So again, it's the null hypothesis because we're saying that there is no difference, which means that one variable is equal to the other variable, and we put it into the context of the question.
Thank you guys so much for watching this video. We hope this helped you understand the difference between null and alternative hypothesis. If you guys need any more extra resources or help, feel free to visit vikinginitiative.com or text in the WhatsApp group chat, and we will get back to you as quickly as possible. Thank you.